Hi there, and welcome to episode 72 of the ADHD Adults Podcast. I'm James Brown, the man about as smart as a Nokia 3310, although I suspect I wouldn't survive getting run over and still being functional afterwards. And as usual, I'm joined by the man who thinks Nokia 3310 is an aria, Dr. Alex Connor, and someone who's probably on her smartphone as we speak, Mrs. ADHD. Hi, Alex.
Hello, you've reached Alex from the ADHD Adults. We've been getting an unusually high number of calls for 7 years now. Your call is not important to us.
You've done that one before, I'm sure.
This is about phones, though.
Oh,
it annoys James when I do
So
long form jokes he doesn't like.
Okay.
He gets bored.
Yeah, anyway. And Sam, hi.
Hi.
See, that's what I like, Al. Short and sharp and to the point. How are you both, Mrs. ADHD first?
Ding.
I'm okay.
Where the fuck was the ding then?
Short and sharp and to the point.
Oh my God,
your sex tape.
Your timing is incredible. That was about 10 seconds after I said it. How are you, Sam?
I'm okay. That's what
Excellent.
people say, isn't it?
That's what they say, isn't it?
It is what people say. You're never okay. And Alex, you?
I'm excellent, thank you both. Yeah, having a good week. Audience seems to be growing larger and larger and larger, largely because people want to listen to James and Sam, which is really nice, but it's so they can feel less shit about themselves. And one of those people sent us a letter.
Did they? He says
Sort of, yeah.
excitedly.
Yeah,
sort of.
It says, I listened to your episode on CBT.
Who's it from?
From, it's from Robert from Kidderminster.
Yeah.
And it reminded me that James had to quit therapy as a teenager because he kept getting erections when they showed him the ink blot tests. He goes on to write, the best thing about this joke is that I changed it to ink blot test from Rorschach test to make it accessible for Sam.
I know what that is.
He
Thanks,
did love
Robert.
Sam though, and he did love Sam, and he would want her to understand
Yeah, he would,
his letters. So well done, Dad. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert.
Thanks,
Explains a lot about
Robert.
James and Sam. We've had a real letter.
Ooh.
It says, this isn't the one, but this is real. Alex, I love your recent medieval church posts on Instagram. I'm dying imagining James's face. Reckon we should all start posting photos of ourselves outside old buildings. I'm planning a trip to Florence in April and I'm all over it. That isn't the letter. I just thought how annoyed you'll be. And this is, we DM each other without you knowing on Instagram, on my personal account with the community, about things that'll annoy you. And I don't know who looks worse there, you or me.
Oh, you for once, hopefully you, because we've had another review for the podcast in which I think it's hard to say, but I've been accused of bullying you, or one person
Correct.
gets berated a lot. So so obviously I'm still the monster, even though you literally think up ways to annoy me.
And I'm literally
Is there you said that's not the real letter? Is there a real letter?
There is, yes. I think this time Sam put this up for us from our repository of letters. So thanks, Sam.
Did
This is
I?
Well, somebody did. It wasn't me, and I'll show you why.
Did I put it in January's?
Don't know. It says, I'm from the UK, but now live in Sydney, Australia. I'm not giving the name because we didn't ask. And was diagnosed with ADHD and bipolar 2 last year and have struggled with titration of medication, especially trying to remember when to take them. Oh, yes. Now I'm for Vance, never listened to a podcast until someone recommended an American guy who I started to listen to and fucking hated it. So stopped listening after 5 minutes and stumbled across you guys. I wanted to say that you are both fucking amazing. Both, Sam.
Both.
And you should be very proud of what you're doing. I love your honesty, humour, self-hatred of yourselves and each other, and the advice you are giving. It's helped me over here in Australia, even though it's different to any something, because whoever put this letter into the thing only put half the letter in as a screenshot.
I would have put it in. I would have put in.
It was
more
me.
than one.
Listen, no, it was me that put it in, and it was a screenshot, and it just says different to the NHS. But Medicare has similarities. I can work that out, you big cock. So how can you not?
I bet there's more to it.
With your PhD from Birmingham framed and put up on your wall in your studio.
That's jokes on you, James. It's in the office.
Yeah, I've got a separate studio.
The unnamed person from Australia that resonates a lot because I have a
Yeah.
form of bipolar cyclothymic, but I'm convinced I actually have bipolar 2. And I'm on similar-ish medication. But thank you for stumbling upon us. I like the fact that people stumble upon us, Alex.
Yeah. It's how
And
we
Sam.
always wanted to build.
Well, they
And to
didn't
a lesser-
stumble upon me. I don't matter.
Ding. So, no, thank you all for our letters thanking James and me, and to a lesser extent, Sam.
Or no extent.
Also, internationally, James, we're still increasing by a surprising. And I know this because I've added them up. 1 country a week. It's 141 countries. The new country's Iceland. May have done that before. And brilliantly, we know who it is because they contact me to say they listened to us while on holiday in Iceland. And they told me how to do the Icelandic hello. And I've lost the letter. So I don't know who it was or how to do that.
Fucking hell.
I know. As they were on holiday, I know that means we don't necessarily have an Icelandic listener, but we still want to say Góðan to any Icelandic listener who can also speak Icelandic, which is 92%.
That actually sounded like it might have been right. I mean, I never want to give you praise, obviously, but that sounded obviously less shit than most things. Anyway, as usual, this friend that tells you look tired and asks whether they can help clean your shower of a podcast is a tragedy in 3 parts. We choose a theme. Last week was about... No, it wasn't. Last week was about CBT, the script's wrong, and ADHD. And this week we're focusing on something that quite a few people have got in touch, but thanks to Sarah, particularly for suggesting this, and that's smartphone use or smartphone addiction in ADHD. The 3 parts include the usual Alex the Psycho education monkey wanking on about smartphone use, our personal reflections on the topic, and the third and final bit where we slackly distribute some top tips in rabbit ears. Spunk trumping, thank you. I'm never going to fucking live those down, am I? Spunk trumping over on the ticker. So, Alex, put down your Sony Ericsson flip phone and tell us about ADHD and smartphone use.
Righto, old chap. As we have definitely mentioned at some point, adults with ADHD are vulnerable to addiction. It is hard to find adults with ADHD that don't have some form of addiction and often have a comorbid addiction disorder. Normally, when people think about addiction, substances, sex, gambling spring to mind, or as James calls that, Monday morning. That's almost a compliment in a cool James Dean way. I regret that, James.
I know.
The availability and utter pervasiveness of technology.
Sorry, just a second.
Yeah.
A cool James Dean way. Is that the most up-to-date reference that you can think of? Yeah, back in the 1950s. 70 years ago, Al.
The coolest of all the eras, by far. James Dean was one of the coolest people that has ever lived.
Yeah, but the 70s were cooler. I mean, anyway, we'll argue about it, we won't forget. Carry on. Don't tell me the 50s was better than the 70s, you monster.
Not better, terrible, especially if you weren't white man, but like cooler in James Dean terms. Anywho, technology has had a from the gramophone to the Morse code. Technology has had a massive impact on everyone's lives, whether they have ADHD or not. The increase in ownership of smartphones with all that lovely internet-y type things and increased smartphone use. A study in Korea suggested that 20% of the general population overuse their smartphones.
So that's smartphone use. Yeah. And that's a statistic in the Korean population. I was very quickly this morning looking up whether it's an addiction. Is it an addiction, though? And I'm asking for a friend who does a lot of something and wonders if wonders if they might actually be addicted.
To something or to smartphones?
Anything really, just the difference between misuse and an addiction. But is smartphone use, is it an addiction? Because people talk about sugar addiction and other things that we could be addicted to where it could not be under the dictionary or the DSM definition of addiction.
No, I mean, it's a really fair point. Do you not think I prepared for that, James, when I wrote this script?
I did. I hoped. I really hoped when you wrote this script, Alex, that you didn't prepare for that.
Well, it's funny. People don't often, especially in the media, understand the difference between. So there's use and abuse, and there's dependence and addiction. Dependence is when there's a withdrawal effect if you take it away. Addiction is when there isn't, but it's continued and unhealthy use. So from a normal person language, I think it's fair to say that if you're using smartphones to a point where it affects you and the people around you, and you'd rather not, but you can't stop, then yeah, I don't think it's unreasonable. From a psychological point of view, it wouldn't be in the DSM statistical manual, but whereas gambling and alcohol would, for example. It's controversial, even though the scientific literature seems to report that the prevalence of smartphone usage and addiction is increasing, especially in adolescents. One study, quite a recent study, suggested that the majority of the research declares that smartphones are addictive. They didn't find sufficient support from an addiction perspective to confirm the existence of that.
A little bit like last week, Alex. What about the ADHD thing? You know, when we set this podcast up, it was loosely about ADHD. Do you want to talk a little bit about that part of things?
Patience, Professor Brown. Patience. Smartphone apps give us dopamine reward, or the other neurotransmitters are available. But this isn't an accident. It's flipping well ruddy engineered into them. The apps are designed to attract and hold our attention. App engineers employ techniques, geeks, they're just geeks, which target the brain's reward systems. And one of them, the really, really classic one, is that pull to refresh feature. When you pull down on your screen and it refreshes. Have you got a new message or have you not? Have you, though? Ooh, let's have another go. Refresh again. It's uncertain. So the pull to refresh may or may not reward the user with a new email message or Instagram like or a reply to your comment on the 10 best operettas forum, for example. In pathological gamblers, evidence has shown that uncertainty drives a bigger dopamine spike than actually receiving money. What this means is anticipate. I know, right? Shocking. It makes sense when you think about, like refresh, ding, ding, ding. What this means is anticipating a reward. Yeah, that was weird. Anticipating a reward is more enjoyable, or at least more motivating than actually receiving the reward. As James always says, Vorfreude is the best of Freude. Anticipation is the best kind of pleasure.
The joke would have been better if it was Sam, because obviously she's a German man.
Yeah, she is. That's true. It would have been good. I forgot where I was. I was thinking about a photo I found of Sam yesterday. Definitely ding.
Ding.
Which I've got to show you after this. Might put it up on Instagram. For my wedding. Amazing, honestly. I'll show you in a bit. I got distracted because of the thing. I do apologize.
Really? Yeah.
I know. So, receiving this reward and anticipating this reward can apply to when smartphone users refresh any app just as much as a gambler playing roulette. Or Baccarat, which I prefer, as it's dead snobby. That was you, was it, James? You added that?
It was.
Well, again, the joke's on you for adding that to the script, because actually my Baccarat paddle doubles as an excellent wooden stake board. You definitely don't know. Speaking of cool people, you're kind of like a reverse George Clooney. Aren't you? Everything that he exudes, you're the antithesis of. Anyway, please finish your boring bit of nonsense. Don't be impatient, James. To lose patience is to lose the battle, as Gandhi said. That's the theory anyway. What about evidence? There are some studies looking specifically at ADHD. And what they have found, broadly speaking, not every single little bit of evidence, Maria, ADHD symptoms have been... we got told off by one of our friends for not putting all the research in. ADHD symptoms have been positively correlated with smartphone addiction in inverted commas, rabbit ears. Adolescents diagnosed with ADHD scored significantly higher in smartphone addiction.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Does that mean you accept rabbit ears now?
Oh, it's for you and Sam. I'm trying to be accessible.
Bastard. Carry on.
Right, yeah. So people with ADHD, higher scores smartphone addiction than those without ADHD. Several studies have shown this. Attention deficit was the most associated symptom of internet in general addiction, which is obviously probably related to smartphone addiction. Back to career. Remember that 20% of the general population who overused them? Well, a study in our fellow ADHDers, which I'm still not comfortable with as a term, found that 40% of ADHD patients were smartphone addicts, not just overuse, were more susceptible to addiction due to poor attention and poor inhibition of our brains.
Interesting. Any
That
thoughts on
sounded
that,
like you weren't
Mrs.
listening.
ADHD? No, I was. The last bit, 40% compared to if
Right.
it is 20%. Any thoughts
Yeah.
on that, Mrs. ADHD?
Is that just in Korea?
It's a great question. Really good question.
No.
No, we probably not. But that's why we have to do these international studies. It's a really good question. It's really important whenever you read a paper to see where it is.
The 40% is interesting, and again, you can't compare two different populations. But the statistic I read this morning in the general population is 6.25%. So if they are generalizable statistics, then that's almost 10 times as likely. Well, about 8 times as likely, isn't it? So that's interesting for once,
Yeah.
Alex. Well done. Okay, we'll take a break, and then we'll come back with some personal reflections, which I think will probably be a bit more chaotic than the first part. See you in a bit. Alex, hi.
Aight. What's up? Hello, Governor.
Okay.
Welcome back to
Sam.
part 2 of episode 72, ADHD and smartphone use. Sorry, I had to read it before the ticker went away. Do you want me
Episode
to do it
72 of
again?
what?
Oh, let me do it again then. Welcome back to part 2 of episode 72 of the ADHD Adults podcast. We're talking about ADHD and smartphone use today.
Boom. And what do we do in part 2?
We're back with personal reflections on ADHD and smartphone use.
We are brilliant. So who do you want to go first, Sam?
You.
Okay. Right.
If only like the Germans, Sam, we had a plural and a singular use of you in formal. And then
I'll go first because obviously I'm
use is the plural.
if you're from
used to.
Belfast, use.
If
Yeah.
from Belfast, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
She doesn't know more than one person though, so she's not used to
That's
using
true.
that language. Okay, so my God. So obviously, like everybody else, I use my smartphone a lot, like a ludicrous amount. With the iPhone, I don't know if it's the same. You have a non-iPhone, don't you, Alex? Which is inferior in most ways. Is that right?
I do, yeah.
Does yours tell you
Samsung.
on a weekly basis what your screen time is?
I mean, it would if I asked it, but I'm
Yeah.
not a
So
smart
my
bit.
you're not a smart bit.
Yeah,
Go
it was
on.
weird. There was a slight funny delay. I'm not a real. I don't use my smartphone that much, so it's
I
not
know
really relevant.
it's annoying. It's annoying actually. He does things like cooking and walking and stuff that normal
Wow.
human beings do. Sam, it's mental.
Yeah.
That must be really good.
Well, it's
Yeah.
it's because of an addiction essentially. So a bit.
Yeah, my daily screen time is normally between 6 and 9 hours, which is, when you think about it, completely ludicrous because I'm asleep for a good, or in bed for a good, Christ knows how
2.5 hours.
meant to be at work for a lot of those hours, but it's all the time. Now, I get genuine separation anxiety if I realize I've left my phone at home. Depending on how far into a journey it is, I have to turn back and get it. There are pragmatic reasons for that, people needing to get hold of you, but that's not the reason I turn back and get it. The reason is the fear that I won't be able to. Yeah, exactly. If anyone ever finds what's on there, then exactly, I'm going to jail. The reason is the fear that I won't be able to get that update on whether somebody liked a post that I did or find the metrics, which I check. I can't tell you how many times a day I check the metrics on this podcast. It must be. It's 20. It really is. Now that's my side of thing. I would say a heavy smartphone user probably leading towards that addicted side of the spectrum of use, possibly. But my experience from living with somebody who was about to give their personal reflections on smartphone use is, before we realized that ADHD, we had the thing, I fucking hated it when Mrs. ADHD was on her smartphone, because I thought, and I've said this before, it's not a new piece of information. I thought, well, that's obviously more interesting than me then, isn't it? In the same way that there were things I did, which she thought, well, he's obviously not interested in me. Tends to turn alarms off if we can.
Sorry.
So it's a medication alarm. No,
I know,
fine.
I wouldn't take this otherwise, you see. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I'll need to set mine actually. So it's a handy reminder. I know I hated it. I thought it was something that meant that she liked me less. And now I understand and accept far more the fact that actually this is giving her something her brain lacks. This is giving her internal peace and quiet when she's focusing on whatever it is on her phone. And this is largely down to communication. I now don't care if she's on her phone. And I think sometimes, and Sam will talk about this in her personal reflection, sometimes if I say to her, do you want me to pause this? Or I just wait for her to finish what she's doing, she, I think, feels attacked. But I'm genuinely not bothered by it. I just understand that it's giving her internal peace, and therefore I want her to have that. So the baggage that we were able to lose or release, because I realized the reason that she was so addicted to her smartphone was because it was one of the few things that gave her dopamine, other neurotransmitters are available, and she's obviously a massively heavy porn user. That you know, I then felt better doing that. So I get it now, and I didn't before, which means we can segue.
What's heavy porn? I think I need to make some notes.
No, so not a user of heavy porn, a heavy user of porn.
Sorry. Right, my bad.
Heavy porn. Sam, what about you, Mrs. ADHD?
Yeah, I love my phone, although I still can completely forget where it is and lose it for whole days, and leave the house without it and all that stuff. And I in true me fashion, it kind of what I'm addicted to on my phone varies. So for a while it was Instagram, and I've got like 50,000 accounts, and I was obsessed with doing that. Completely lost interest with that now, and it's just all logic puzzles, and that's just all I want to do. So it tends to be games at the minute, but yeah, it can be all different things all the time, and it used to cause a lot of arguments. It still does a little bit, because you know we've still got emotional dysregulation and RSD and all the things. So you know, if I am paying attention to something else instead of James, of course he's going to get upset. But yeah, it's that I think. Sorry.
So what's your screen now? You're not supposed to bring attention to my hand. Honestly, you two, you should have seen it last week. Sam James 3 times said, "Yeah, Alex, yes." When I had my hand up, ableism interruptions coming.
And welcome to the Ableism podcast with Dr. Alex Connor.
Criticising your hair, James, is not ableism. That's a choice. This isn't a choice. There's no hair.
No, obviously.
So
yeah,
what's your screen? What is your screen time, Sam?
I don't know. How do I know that? I don't know.
We'll look later. It's on your phone. We'll look in the break so we can report back in part 2, but it tells you on your phone.
Yeah. But yeah, I have to, if I'm watching TV, or I have to be, I'm on my phone. One thing is not enough to occupy me. So if I'm watching TV or doing something else, I tend to be playing games on my phone as well, which can be annoying for people.
Like your passengers.
Yeah.
So do you both see, you both clearly overuse the phone in your own words, I think. Do you want to reduce it?
Yeah.
Do you, James?
No. You can separate mine into functional heavy use, which is using it for work, sending emails, using it for the charity, using it for social media for the charity. And then the more non-functional use. So Wordscapes is a game that I'm obsessed with at the minute, and the other night I lay there because I couldn't sleep for 6 hours playing it. Probably it didn't help me try to sleep.
No, definitely not. Melatonin beat.
Yes, I know. But also in the bath, anytime that I have downtime, kind of me time, I'll play that game. So I don't want to use it less, because maybe I'm making this up. Maybe this is a bit like when I was addicted to opioids and I pretended I wasn't because they were giving me migraines. I went through a whole 6-month process of, well, there's got to be a reason for these migraines, because I didn't want to admit I had to stop taking opioids. So maybe it's the addiction saying, no, I don't need to use my phone less, or maybe I actually don't, but I don't feel that way, which is interesting because Sam really does, don't you?
Yeah. I'd like one thing to be enough for me. I'd like to be fully absorbed in something else that I'm doing. Ding, ding, ding.
I was laughing too hard to do
it. I'd like to actually be fully engaged with one thing and not have to play some stupid, shitty game on my phone as well.
Yeah.
To be honest, I'd just like to be a normal person. Is that too much to ask? I'd just like not to be me, really.
Yeah, it is. It is absolutely not going to happen. I mean, that is the whole point of emotional acceptance, blah, blah, blah. I think there are ways of choosing your activity to be one that you're more likely to do in its entirety.
And so 2 things quickly before we move on to Alex's reflections. The first thing is, it's clear that Sam can focus or hyper-focus on other things. The Lego story from a couple of weeks ago, the phone was invisible to her because she was so focused on Lego. So if there's a new thing like macrame or marble parkour or Lego or something that she just gets that bigger reward from, she will focus on that. And the other thing I forgot because I've got ADHD. So Alex, what about your personal reflections?
I fucking hate smartphones. I think they're the devil. The devil. I think
they're one. Devil, Al.
I think they're
not literally the devil.
Not literally the devil.
I think that they're arguably one of the most damaging things that has happened to our society. I honestly do. And I know there's really positive things they can do, especially if you've got a disability or you're marginalized. They can be really good. But this Wild West free-for-all dopamine rush of the engineers with the apps is destroying us a bit. I see it all the time. I had a serious computer game addiction and smartphone addiction for many years, to the point which was really, really damaging. I'm sure I've told this story. After I got over my computer game addiction, I was lying in bed, and my eldest daughter was 2, and I was playing on my phone, like scrolling. She was lying on my shoulder chatting away, and I was really obsessed. I used to be checking Twitter and Facebook on my laptop, and I'd shut my laptop down, and then I'd reach for my phone and open up the same apps and check them, and and that is 20, 30 times a day, as well as playing computer games and getting angry with people interrupting me, and awful. And I was scrolling away with my daughter on my shoulder. She was chatting. I was scrolling away at nothing, Facebook or the Cecilia Bartoli fan club, something normal. And it was Twitter, actually. I was scrolling through Twitter and I read a single tweet, and it said, "Who are you ignoring while reading and scrolling through these tweets?"
Oh,
I know. And I looked down and I hadn't heard a word she'd said.
Didn't you tell us like last week?
It was about a year ago.
Not a year ago.
I don't remember. It certainly wasn't last week. But beautifully interjected.
Okay. Fair enough.
It was the timing.
Yeah, it's really a really emotional point as well. So thanks.
It's almost up there with our shorthand for mental health crisis now, which is it's lovely up there.
Yeah, it's lovely up there, isn't it?
Oh, look up there. It's a lovely view.
What it was a massive shock. I realized I was filling all of my life with this bullshit. And I that day I made changes, and I've kept them to this day, like 4 or 5 years later. And I've never looked back. I'm really happy with it. I stopped Facebook immediately. That was difficult, but I just shut it down. And I made a deal with myself that I can look at my phone whenever I want. Anytime I want, I can look at it. But I had to get up and walk across the room to pick it up to access it. Because saying to myself, I won't do this. We've talked about that, didn't we, last week? You can't just stop things. You can't, nobody, it doesn't really work as a resolution.
I wasn't here last week.
I know, the week before, Sam. Do you remember resolutions don't work as well if you're trying to just quit something? Yeah, you were there. You were there physically. Ding. So what I did was I would put it somewhere on charge usually. If I wanted to impulsively reach for it, I couldn't. But if I needed to check something, even if it was like check Twitter, I would stand up and walk over to it, because that's the problem. It's just the impulsive, constantly patting my jeans. Oh, there's my phone there. Got to check it. Got to check it every fucking 30 seconds. They're not jeans, James. They're more of a pleated trouser. But you can see I'm trying to be accessible. It has been brilliant. And I still use my phone, and I can now have it in my pocket without checking it after 2 or 3 years. I'm still vigilant, though. It is just physically keeping it not in arm's reach. I have to consciously choose to walk to it. That's it.
I've got to say, for the first time, though, that is it's an incredibly useful personal reflection for me, because now I know why it is that you don't answer messages sometimes for entire weekends about really important stuff.
Well, importance, subjective thing. This is where CBT would help you, James.
Fuck off. But this is where it comes down to one of the things that I do, and this isn't ADHD related, is I expect other people to act and think the same way that I do. So
Yeah.
that means I expect people to be compassionate, which makes me sound, oh, look at me, I'm compassionate. But if I send a message to someone, and bear in mind that I don't answer messages also for days for some people, not because I don't care, but because as soon as a message disappears off the first page of WhatsApp, it's dead to me. And
Whereas I
get
haven't
quite a
got
few
my phone.
messages.
I'm in the forest for 8 hours. I don't have it.
Yeah.
I've got it in the
Is that
wagon
how
or something.
Is that how long it takes to get rid of the bodies?
But what if somebody got you and what if you needed to call emergency services in the forest because
Because there's like a psycho. The chances of 2 murderers being
Well,
in the
okay,
forest
what-
is
what-
huge.
what-
I was going to say
it-
if you found a body,
yeah.
but you would have put it
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
So-
What if you stumbled over because of the massive top-heavy weight of your head and fractured your ankle in the forest?
Which would be all right. Vitamin R, my friends, vitamin R, and the R stands for risk. Life without risk is really just a shallow, pathetic nothing. Like it.
When
I have
when
phone.
risk-
I leave it in the cabin.
Any risk in your life?
He does. Sometimes he buys.
I've never been caught.
Sometimes he buys jazz albums by artists that he's never listened to before. Sam.
Oh.
Anyway.
I really do that.
Oh fuck me.
Risky.
Anyway, time for our weekly game of What's James Lost, Forgotten, or Mislaid this week. I know, and I only do this. So you won all because we're going annually now, aren't you, Al?
Boom. Yeah.
So I don't think you actually know this one, Mrs. ADHD, so you can pull whatever faces you want. But this is, I couldn't be asked to write another one. This is car instead of cars. You had cars last week. So this is car related, and it's something that is at the
I don't
time
get a
thought was quite
choice.
funny. No, you don't, because I didn't have time to write another one because I stayed in bed too late.
You lazy bastard.
I forgot something to do with my car in the last week, and there are 3 options. So first of all, did I drive to the supermarket and not only leave it unlocked but leave the boot open because I'd got some bags out of the boot?
Like wide open.
Yeah, like wide open, not just unlocked. The boot was open. Okay, that's option 1. B, did I forget how many pedals there were in the car? And option C or 3, did I take the wrong keys, leaving Mrs. ADHD stranded somewhere?
Ooh. I think that James's absolute genius has just told us that Sam wouldn't know what this was, and if she'd been stranded somewhere, she'd probably.
So you're down to 2.
would
You're down to
probably
2 again.
remember
I
that.
fucked this up last week, but you didn't get a 50-50 last week, so you're not going to this week, mate. To be honest, are you?
No, exactly. I think it isn't the pedals, because I've been in a car with you, James, and you just wildly mash at them inexpertly and like hope that something works. Absolutely terrible. Therefore, it's big open boot.
You're wrong.
We have how many pedals we've got.
Yeah, we have the electric car, which is automatic, and we have a mini, which is a manual. And I got in, and I genuinely thought, hang on a minute, I put my left foot on a pedal, don't I? And I looked down because I couldn't see the accelerator, and I could just see 2 pedals. I was right. So which one's which, and what do they do? And I sat there for about a minute trying to work out. I have to have my foot on one when I start the car, and then I remembered, oh no, there's 3. There isn't. There's a little one down there, the accelerator. Forgot how many pedals a manual car has.
That's amazing. I don't drive a manual
isn't it?
at all, because one of my cars are really old, automatic from the 80s, and the other one's automatic as well. And I keep, when I have to borrow a car, I just stall it constantly like an idiot.
Yeah, or like a really poor driver. Anyway, so that's 2-1. You're down 2-1 for the year, which is good. And we will, on that delightful note, take a break, and we'll be back in part 3 with Samantha's screen time statistics and some, spunk trumping. See you in a bit.
Spunk trumping.
Spunk trumping.
Welcome back to episode 72 of the ADHD Adults Podcast, where we're talking about everything smartphone addiction. This is part 3, or spunk trumping, as James calls it, where we're giving I'm giving top tips. Sam doesn't know what's going on, and James is just going to give the weakest advice you've ever heard in your life about smartphone addiction, despite having an actual smartphone addiction. Let's absolutely crack one out from James, shall we? James, do you want to start with your top tips?
Have you already forgotten that we said Sam would go first? Obviously, no.
I have
working
not
memory there.
forgotten. I was not listening.
Okay.
Sam, tell us about your smartphone top tips.
Okay, so things that I do that can work. If I'm working from home, I give my phone to James, or I put it in a completely separate room so that I can't look at it. And then, because I can get really quickly hyper focused on things, so once I get absorbed, I'm fine. I won't even think about my phone. After a certain time at night, I go to bed very, very early. I then try not to look at my phone. Sorry, James. It doesn't always work. Because if I look at my phone, it keeps me awake.
Is it physically accessible to you?
Yeah.
Without having to get out of bed?
Yes.
Okay.
So is yours not out? What if somebody called you with an emergency in the middle of the night? Is it in the room? But I know obviously you've got a massive, probably 20 foot by 20 foot bedroom in your mansion, and you've probably got a butler there holding your phone for you during the night. But how do you
just put it in the library?
Does that mean you have an actual alarm clock instead of your phone?
It only needs to be 2 meters away, so you have to physically get out of bed to check it and put it back. Have your charger 2 meters away? Job done, honestly.
But then how do you check the time in the middle of the night?
We've also got there's no 2 meters away in our bedroom. We've got a pretty decent sized bedroom.
Yeah.
So again, it comes back. So everybody, the top tip is have a mansion, and in that mansion,
your bedroom is not 1.9 meters square. Don't be that.
No, but there's a
ridiculous.
There's a bed in there, though, isn't there? A very large bed, so she doesn't have to touch me during the night.
Yeah, in the court when you're looking, look from your pillow to the wall there. There might be a table or a dresser. In fact, I know there is in your house.
No, there isn't.
No, not in the bedroom.
There's just a bed in our room.
No, and there's a pole which she never uses for a pole fitness.
I need to take that out.
Which is in the bedroom.
I've never used it once.
No, exactly. Anyway,
physical activity. Then you put it at the foot of the bed, so you have to sit up to check it.
We're going to tread on that and break it.
This is classic addiction. It feels like talking to somebody with an alcohol or a drug addiction.
This is
really
classic,
logical.
This is classic privilege from somebody that has a massive bedroom and doesn't understand that there might not be somewhere pragmatic that's 2 meters away for me to put a phone.
Anyway,
yes.
I'll carry on. My phone is always on silent. I mean, I'm saying that as if I do this to stop me from doing things because I can't deal with any noise at all. But I've set it so that it doesn't give me any notifications either, because obviously if it is then next to me on my bed or wherever, I'm going to get distracted. So no notifications, on silent. So I don't tend to get involved with social media and messages and things like that. That's not what I get bogged down with. If I look at it as games. Anyway. Top tips, things that have worked in the things that have worked in the past is having set times to use my phone.
Yeah.
Oh, were you going to say that one? You shouldn't have. No.
The top tipics. I was saying bastards at because again, you pick your and now I've just fucking highlighted it. Oh fuck, just carry on.
I'd forgotten top tipics.
Anyway, back to top tipics. Things that have worked for me in the past: have set times to look at your phone. That works well. During films and TV, have regular breaks to look at your phone, because otherwise you'll annoy the shit out of James, who really loves films, and you have to be on your phone the whole time. So we have regular breaks throughout. Find a compromise that acts as a reward. So if you don't look at your phone, you'll get time to do other things, which can be rewarding, or you'll put up with the other things in anticipation of that reward of looking at your phone at the end of however long that you're doing the thing for. I don't know if that makes sense. Whatever you do is unlikely to last long anyway. So just try different stuff.
Yeah, I think that's good. I'll take some of that. It is. Alex, do you want to go next?
Okay, right. If you spend all day in the hairdressers, sooner or later you're going to get a haircut.
What?
He said this to me last night, and I have to agree. It is a very good.
What does that mean?
It means, Sam, if you can access your phone, you will. If you sit in a hairdresser's, you get a haircut. If you sit in a bar, you're going to at some point have a drink of alcohol.
I used
if
to own
got-
a hairdresser's, and
Yeah.
it's not guaranteed that you would get a haircut.
What, you never had a haircut?
I've had a haircut, but
yeah, but
people
you,
that
she
shave
worked,
it-
no, she worked,
amazing.
but you worked there. It's a little bit like Sam. So imagine, for example, you're a heavy drug user and you've got drugs in the house. You're going to use them. Imagine you're a binge
Yeah.
eater and you've got all the shit food in the house.
Yeah.
You're going to eat it.
Imagine.
Exactly.
I can't
Exactly.
imagine that for you.
Imagine, Sam.
You're right. Okay, I get it now. I get it.
Yeah.
With all addiction, one of the biggest and this is my tip of the tongue response, brain not working, the biggest cofactor of allowing that addiction to happen is opportunity. And that's what I know that you're going to say, oh, you put it in the library. Well, I do sometimes put it in the library. That's not relevant. But if you make it harder for yourself, ding, then you will be less likely, and it's all about probability. You will be less likely to use that phone. One caveat tip, I think, is that if it's replacing something else, something much worse, then you have to think about whether the cold turkey of something like using a smartphone is going to lead you down behaviors. For example, as we all know, I am not brilliant with alcohol, or rather I'm really fucking good at it. And I'm not drinking at the moment, which is really wonderful. And I use Sudoku on my phone to get those little bits of reward. Yes, James, Sudoku. Expert Sudoku.
Just don't.
Is that sorry?
Go on. Yeah.
Is that okay to swap? Because this is something I do a lot. So because it's the only thing I can do is to swap one addiction for another.
Yeah.
Is that okay to do that?
It's a really, really brilliant question. It's probably the question in the field of ADHD addiction at the moment. And the short answer is yes, with massive caveat. So if it is healthier and less like acutely dangerous, then it is better, but not good.
Yeah.
So crystal meth is probably a no.
That's an orange, isn't it? In the traffic light system, very much an orange. I swap drugs for exercise. I do running and cycling and so on.
Worst trade ever.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I swapped cool for not cool. The drugs are good, kids.
No, but that's good. I get it.
It is good, but there are elements of it that aren't great, and there are elements of smartphone use, obviously, that we've described that aren't great. But if the alternative is, smack, I don't know what that is, then yeah, then it's better, isn't it? And there are no rules, remember, to the universe. We're just trying to muddle through, hope we get out alive. So
well, there are, but they're just arbitrary rules that were created by people hundreds of years ago that we just blindly accept.
Well, I don't follow any of them.
None of them.
Remember, he's a rebel in Rabbit
yeah.
Ears. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the psychopath in Rabbit Ears, the rebel is.
My mum and dad used to call me always as a kid. He's the rebel without a clues here.
That was just to your face.
Yeah, it was, yeah. What about you, James? I guess we have to hear your utter bollocks, seeing as you do 8.5 hours on your phone every day.
Yeah.
Stops you doing 9.
No, it's interesting though, because the top tips I'm going to talk about are ones that I've thought of for Mrs. ADHD, but not applied to myself, even though. So, but by the way, in the break, we worked out that Mrs. ADHD's screen time on a normal week is probably about 10 hours a day. So that's higher than mine. And
but
we have
week,
tried
1 hour 40.
Exactly, largely due to death. We've worked out in the past that having a box or a drawer to put them in, and like you say, Al, having them away from you works for a while, and having almost like giving a child sweets when it does a poo, having a time where you say, right, you can have your phone for 5 minutes, and then both excitedly running over to the box or the drawer and having our phone and just checking things for 5 minutes and putting
James,
it away.
This is exactly my point. Don't put a time limit. Don't restrict yourself. Say you can check your phone whenever and as much as you want. You just have to physically move to get it.
Us?
Yeah, but you just have to stand up and get it. Then you're not restricting yourself. You are, honestly. I know adults don't have oppositional defiance disorder. It's in the DSM that they don't. But this cunt does. Oh, I'm sorry. I never use the C word.
That's your first. I think that might be your second C-bomb. Yes. So the second tip is, whether that works or not, is, as we've just talked about, track your screen time. Get an idea of what your baseline is if you want to reduce your use, and set yourself a realistic target. So a coaching approach. Yeah, that's one way of doing it. A coaching approach might be, well, the topic is smartphone use. My goal is to use my smartphone less, but in 4 weeks' time. There are different options we've talked about, such as putting it away from you, etc. Alex is sinking down in his chair for some reason. And therefore, you can see and measure if you're making progress. So if your screen time reduces by half an hour a day after the first week, you can say, this is working great. And as Mrs. ADHD says, gamify against yourself, against the target that you've set. The other things, and Alex has mentioned or bored us about this in the past, use the blue light filter. If you're going to use it before bed, ideally you shouldn't use it before bed. But if, like Mrs. ADHD, it's just this utter center of dopamine, other neurotransmitters are available, release, then use the blue filter before bed to try and reduce some of that stimulation from the light. And try and have a cut-off time if you can. Try and have all this is try, because again, if you are genuinely addicted or a heavy user of a smartphone, it's very difficult to just say, well, I'll stop doing that then. So just try these things and see if any of them work.
Okay,
brilliant. It wasn't just to you, but it can be. Right, product recommendation of the week. There's a couple. One is a box or a drawer to put your phone in. The other
box.
is
I'm privileged.
Now I've got to use my sock again instead of a tissue.
Ding.
I squirted it all over myself. Ding.
Ding. The other, and this is there is irony in this. The other product recommendation is an app, but there are apps. One called Digital Wellbeing that can help you, can literally control elements of your phone to try and reduce the amount of time you spend on it. Digital Wellbeing is just one of them, but there are lots of apps designed to help you engage more healthily with your phone, because they are incredibly useful things. I can't remember the exact quote from Tim Berners-Lee when the internet was invented, but he talked about the fact that it was incredibly powerful, but also had potential to be, damaging, and smartphones are that too. So that was episode 72 of the ADHD Adults podcast, where we talked about ADHD and smartphone use or addiction. If for some reason you enjoyed this episode, why not support the charity on the link provided? Because otherwise Alex is going to have to share the 256 color images from his Motorola phone that he took in an indiscreet situation on a very, very niche website. As usual, contact us. Heavy porn website, yeah. Contact us on the Discord community, or on the socials. Or the ticker. Yes, James makes mistakes with his mouth. Ding. And we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye all.
Trigger warning klaxon. Klaxon, 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 big klaxon. Trigger warning klaxon. Klaxon, klaxon, klaxon.